lowering the cost of prescription drugs. Last May, when he signed an executive order to align U.S. prescription drug prices with the lowest prices in other countries, President Trump made it clear he's tired of Americans subsidizing 75% of global pharmaceutical profits. Trump wants equity in pricing. But will his order lead to lower costs and breakthrough drugs for U.S. consumers? Well, joining us is Nicholas Armstrong, policy analyst at the Texas Public Policy Foundation and a Young Voices contributor. Nicholas, good to have you with us. So I know you've done some research on this. You wrote an article about it. First, explain why are Americans paying much more for prescription drugs than people in other countries? How does Trump hope to change that?
Well, thank you for the question, and it's a blessing and an honor to be with you here today to talk about this topic. And kind of zooming out a little bit, Americans pay the highest prices for drugs and for healthcare in general. And so as a large factor to this is the patient has been removed from the equation. And so particularly with drug prices, we see this with pharmacy benefit managers. These are large middlemen that have to work to have the rebates with the drugs, and they inflate the price of the drugs. There's also regulatory problems with the FDA. It's very costly for drug manufacturers to have these drugs go to market. Many of them fail, and so the high prices are a signal and try to recoup some of the costs for the drug manufacturers. And so these are just a couple of ways of why drug prices are so high in the U.S.
Yes, but Nicholas, they're not high for people in many other countries. I've traveled to many countries, and they're a lot lower in many places. So I think people watching this are wondering, so how could a stroke of a presidential pen change things? How likely is it to lower costs for Americans?
Yes, so you are correct that there are lower drug prices in other countries, and that's due to those countries enacting very strict price controls on those drugs. They are able to, through government regulation and different schemes, they're able to lower the cost of drugs. Now, that does lead to those countries having less access to drugs through drug shortages, so there is an issue with that. But there is a lot more. The government is the primary buyer and the regulatory body, whereas you have in the United States, where we have a lot more middlemen and more buyers with health plans, insurance companies, and so that's one of the reasons. And so President Trump's executive order, he ties our drug prices for Medicaid and Medicare to those lowest prices available in other countries, and so that is how he's trying to address the high prices of drugs in the United States via his executive order.
Okay, so what effect will this have on costs for Americans in the long term?
So there's some discussion on that. This most favored nation policy that is established by the executive order. It was President Trump has signed a previous order in his first administration that was very similar, that was struck down in the courts. And so there is some question about legality and how effective this will be, and how drug manufacturers have already signaled that they are willing to work with the administration to lower their prices domestically. And so this is one way that President Trump is hoping to bring the prices of drugs down through regulatory, or bringing people together to the table with those drug manufacturers to lower the cost of prices for drugs for Americans.
What might it mean for new drug research and development and pricing for breakthrough drugs?
The drug companies have expressed concern that with those tying those prices, potentially that this will lead to lower revenues for drug companies for those new research, those drugs that are researched to bring to market.
So fewer new drugs then?
There is the possibility of that happening, yes.
Okay, and Americans pay a lot for health care. So how soon can we expect to see lower prescription drug costs?
So the executive order establishes instructs the Secretary Kennedy at HHS that he is tasked with negotiating those prices with the drug manufacturers. And so it seems as though he has hit that, where he has negotiated the prices, and there is a 6-month period from May, when the executive order went into effect, when President Trump signed it, to now the drug manufacturers have to work on hitting those negotiated prices. And if they don't, then the president has signaled that he is willing to enact these prices with the most favored nation policy through rulemaking authority.
Okay, we'll wait and see. So maybe by the end of this year, early next year. Young Voices contributor Nicholas Armstrong, policy analyst at the Texas Public Policy Foundation. Thank you, Nicholas, for setting us straight today. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.